Hello, my name is Amber and welcome to my corner. In today's video, I'm going to go over how I'm beginning this commission I received for a Kali painting. And I started on an 8x10 wood board I sanded down. I have my reference, favorite brushes, a bunch of colors on a paper plate, and my favorite mixing bowl, and some mineral spirits. This is not water because today I'm using oil paint. I always keep my reference right next to me. So this is a picture of my reference, very simple. I always like to start with an outline of some sort. It doesn't have to be a perfect outline. And I'm just going through shape by shape. She has a lot of jewelry on, so I'm just trying to get the basic shapes of that. And then just like in my other video, I always lay a base layer of every single element in my painting, because I think a lot of people, especially in the beginning of starting a painting as a hobby or a career, people tend to get too caught up in one small little detail, and then you'll spend 3 hours on this one detail and the rest of your canvas is blank. So to avoid nitpicking myself or not being efficient with my time, I think it's just being too hard on yourself. I always just get a base layer over every single thing. And so even if I don't like something necessarily, I force myself. I'm like, okay, Amber, just move on. It's all in the process. And I almost have to trust myself, even though I'm not sure yet, but it always turns out beautiful. So for my reference, I went online, and this is the Hindu goddess or deity Kali, and I looked at hundreds of pictures of how people depict her and paint her, and I picked all my favorite things and put them together into my reference that I've been using. So references are so important, especially with something very complicated, all these little details that she's going to be wearing all over her head and body. And you could definitely go with the flow and experiment more, but I love a plan. I love a plan for something like this. So look up photos, find the things you like. That is what art is, in music and painting, any creative thing. You take the pieces you like from other people's and make your own. Now I've slightly slowed down my time lapse so that way I can focus in on my second layer, and you can see that a little bit better. Now coming into my second layer, I'm wanting to really define the three-dimensional elements in her face and the jewelry. So whenever I'm painting, I mix so many colors and I use so many colors. That's why I fill my plate with, every shade I can think of. And then I'm not necessarily thinking, I knew I wanted a lighter blue, but I didn't really know which shade. I like just playing around, and I like just mixing stuff with my hands. So that part's just fun for me. And I say really experiment. So I put blue, green, a little burgundy, white, a little yellow. And I thought, okay, I like this one. I put it on all the places on her skin I wanted to highlight, and then I have some emeralds I'm putting in parts of her earrings and things, and I added that bluish color into those as well. I think whenever you're making an image, it's pleasant to the eye at the end. It makes it more cohesive if you use those same shades in other elements of it. So, the colors I put on her skin, I'm going to add a little bit around the jewelry. And then the whole image feels like one. It feels like that light is reflecting similar shades around. Her skin's bouncing off of the gold, which is bouncing off of that fire sky, So I make sure that I'm reusing shades in different parts. So even this little yellow that I put around some of the jewelry, I put a little bit of that in her tongue, because, maybe you're not looking at a tongue and you see some yellow, but when you look at a painting, there are colors there people don't even realize. So that's a big one. Mix millions of colors. Use as many as your plate or palette can hold, because it's only going to make it look more dynamic. I just love colors, so it's rare for me to paint something monochromatic, but I have done it. I like to challenge myself, but if I have an opportunity to use every color I possess, that's what I'm going to do. So this commission was definitely right up my alley, something very, very fun for me. So I'm coming in to parts of the jewelry. I'm doing the same thing I was talking about. I made like a rosy kind of purpley color that I wanted to give her some rosy cheeks. And I used a little bit in that neck as a shadow. And then I'm taking that same rosy purple and going around and shadowing parts of the jewelry. And in our brains, maybe you think that does not make sense. This jewelry is not purple, but you have to trust that light's bouncing around, and just trust that all these colors are going to look really good together. So if you're making something, people will paint. I've taught a lot of pet classes, and people will come in, they have a white dog, and they want to paint all the fur white. But the thing is, with light, with the skin tone you see through that fur, with maybe some grass next to it, or some stains around the mouth from food or saliva. There's all kinds of reasons. Things aren't just a single color. So yes, her jewelry is predominantly gold, but I gotta put some purple on there. I'm gonna put some orange. I'm gonna put some browns. You have to put a bunch of things, and that's what makes it so dynamic. That's what makes a painting, a picture striking. Is that variety in there. But even a monochromatic painting that I may make, I'm going to do so many shades of gray, or let's say it's a grayscale. I'm gonna add some blues in my gray. I'm gonna add some yellows in my gray. I'm not just gonna do black and white. Even monochromatic things, you have to switch up that tone with other colors that seem weird, but just try it. Try it. I promise. The more color, the better. That's my motto. So now I'm coming in. I was tired of looking at the eyes that were kind of fuzzy. I'm ready for some finer details. So I talk about being efficient a lot. I'm kind of an impatient painter, and I love oil paint because if I get bored with one thing, I was excited about the jewelry, but I'm ready to move on. So oil paint will stay wet forever. I can go to the eyes, I can go to my eyebrows, and I can come back and still blend that jewelry in a second. And I love that. I also love that what I've been talking about, bringing every color to every aspect and area of the painting. I can always go back. So like I threw a little random thing on the tongue. Okay, I put a little bit around this cheekbone right here, and I can go in and blend that anytime later. So oil is great for impatient people. Well, it dries really slow, but it's great for people who get bored, I guess, in a certain area. So as you can see, I definitely I think for me, I just don't like looking at a blank canvas. So if you find you're an artist or you want to start art but you hate looking at the blank canvas, do what I do and just start putting stuff everywhere. Literally just put crap all over the canvas, all over the piece of paper, and then keep working it. So this is only my second layer. If I listened to that little voice in my head that said, ew, it looks weird, doesn't look like your reference yet, or how you imagine in your mind, I never would have continued. But this is only the second layer. I'm probably going to do 5 layers of this, and it's going to be awesome. So you really have to give yourself a break, and remember, the beginning is rough. That's why they call it rough draft. That's why it's the beginning. You have to tell the whole story still. So really, really, I just say, give yourself a break, start putting stuff everywhere. Okay, then put stuff everywhere again. So now I'm finally getting into these deeper shadows in the cheeks. I love this because this is starting to pop, and there's always a certain point in every painting, every drawing, every song, whatever you're creating, there's a point where you're like, okay, I love this. And for me, it was when I started shadowing around my cheekbones and chin. And I was like, okay, we're going somewhere. So just wait for your moment. Maybe it's the second layer, maybe it's the third layer, but it will come if you just keep layering, keep experimenting with colors, and just try something out. Because oil takes so long to dry, you could put something on there, try it, and if you don't like it, then wipe it off, take some mineral spirits and wipe it right off. So I started coming around with these highlights, kind of semi-final highlights around my face, and noticed that my two eyes ended up a little bit wonky. They say everyone has a good side and a funky side. If you did that filter that shows you one side of your face doubled, everyone has like a weird one. Well, my Collie's weird one is definitely that right. And so I noticed it was a little funky. It's slightly higher, but I sort of try to trim down that lid with the light blue, but I'm really going to wait to fix that once this is dried. So I'll have to wait a couple days, and then I'll bring that lower lid down. But I decided to just move on. It looks better, and so now I'm going to come into my... this is one of my semi-final highlights for my jewelry. So I mix this light yellow, and as I'm coming around, notice that I dip my brush almost every single time I need to make lines in an area. So that is something, while I'm impatient or get bored easily in each section, with painting, you do need the patience to keep dipping. It's so important. You always get a nice crisp line, solid line. I'm trying to make painting easier for myself, and so if you follow that in turn, you'll make it easier for yourself if you're starting to paint. Just dip it each time, and then I'm doing it, it's really quick because it's sped up a little bit, but I also roll it. I kind of roll it sideways in the paint just to keep, I'm using a round brush, and so I'll do a little roll in there sideways, and that will maintain the point of my bristles. So kind of dip, roll each time, and then I'll get something pointing. I also want to point out I am not using my smallest brush yet, so I'm still in my medium size for this painting relative to the painting size, of course. I started with my largest, mapped everything out, boom, boom, boom. Now I'm in my medium, and so I still am going to go in with something even smaller to get the fine details. And so that is also a trick I do to make painting easier on myself. If I started with my small one, because I said, well, this has a lot of small details, I'm going to start small, I would end up using the small one probably the whole time. When you're painting, you get in the zone, and you'll get stuck in how you begin, sort of. It's also why I put so many colors on my palette. Maybe I won't use all these colors, but if I don't put a lot on there, I'm gonna get stuck with the ones I did put on there, and maybe limit myself what I'll end up mixing. Because we're in the zone, you don't want to keep, oh, where's this color, where's that color? Just get everything out you want. So by starting big brush, I'm forcing myself to map it out quicker. Big brush can paint more at a time. And also just kind of accept it's not perfect yet, and that I'm going to keep getting finer and finer. So it is a lot of trusting the process. That's something I definitely learned after many years of painting. And so if I knew that trick early on, I definitely wish someone would have told me, start with your big brush, then go medium, then go small. You'll save so much time, heartache. So before I put on my third layer of my Kali part, I want to finalize my background and make it brighter, so I'm doing a second coat. This will pretty much be it for my background, so that way Kali can really pop. Now unfortunately this next footage, I didn't realize my head blocked most of it. All I really did during this video was I came in the next day and was fixing my eyes, making my tongue a little more symmetrical, but the bulk of the rest of this video I can't show because it's just showing the back of my head and I'm blocking it even more than what you see here. So since I can't show you what I did during that step, I'll just give you this comparison photo. The one on the left is before, one on the right is after. I made her eye and tongue more symmetrical. I added her bindi. I filled in her third eye. I did add a couple tones around her face. I'm always doing that each layer to just make it more and more realistic. So coming in for my fourth layer now, I am going to be getting really close to the final product of what I want for her face and her jewelry. And after this layer, I'm going to go in and I had one more element I was going to add to the background, but I knew the jewelry and face would take the most time. So now I'm going to kind of add in just these little extra details after this. I wanted to add some flowers and I want to add some highlights into her hair. So this is that layer before that. So I started going in with this light blue, making the parts on a face that catch light the most pop. So we have her above and below her eyebrow. I have around that crease right on the outside of the mouth because it's giving not a full smile, not like my reference photo. I made that one a little happier, but I like kind of the neutral Kali. But still there's like a little crease there, and then the bridge of the nose. So I came in with my lightest blue so far, add those things, and then now I'm taking an orange and going around all the jewelry. So I'm going to be really finalizing that jewelry in this step. That was my goal. I pretty much like the face, but the jewelry had some ways to go. So I'm going to put a darker orange than I did before. My colors I've used so far would be, I did a light yellow, I did that purple, I did like a medium darker brown yellow, I did some bluish black in there, some greenish black in there, and then now I'm coming on with the darker orange. So that is going to be this next color. And just like every color in the jewelry, I mean, I just put it everywhere. I am a little loosey-goosey, but I try to think intentionally about where would some shadows be, you know. So I have the clasp coming from one earring to another, holding them together. So that's going to need a shadow in that part where that attaches inside the hole of the other earring. Things like that. I make sure, okay, I'll put some orange in there because that's one of my darker colors. But I'm not super stressed about particulars. There's a lot of jewelry happening and I'm just really easy going with it. So I just slap some orange around. The biggest tip I can give if you're doing some kind of large detailed area like this where there's a lot going on, lots of different shapes, try not to be symmetrical. Light doesn't generally reflect symmetrically. If you're doing a nature painting, nature is rarely symmetrical. So really try to break that mold our brains try to create, and our brains will try to organize things too much. And real life is a little more playful than that. So I just put that orange everywhere. See, I even put a little orange on the tongue, and I sat for a second and thought, what do I think of that? I like it. And then moving on, still just orange everywhere. But yeah, each of these pieces, and you'll be able to see it a little better with my next layer of bright stuff on the jewelry. But each of these pieces at the top, they're like a little paisley shape or a teardrop shape. And those little things, I just put some orange on and did it different on each one. So some I only put orange on the top, some I only underlined it with orange. The orange is in different places because I'm having that light bounce around in different places. Alright, so now moving into my brightest jewelry layer yet. This is really going to make it pop. I like to work pretty dark to light, as you can tell, because you can always go brighter. If I start with my brightest, then it's hard to highlight stuff. And I want to make these look really shiny. I'm coming in and everything is going to start popping. I have a lot more contrast now. And you notice I did the earring on the left and then moved to the earring on the right at the bottom, instead of moving up the whole side. That's a personal choice. I like to work both areas that are similar, because this painting is all about symmetry, right? The way Kali is depicted is usually very symmetrical, so I try to stay in that theme. Okay, I'm in my emerald teardrop. I want to feel that emerald teardrop energy for a little bit and stay in that zone and paint the other one. Because if I go around, my style kind of changes, and maybe I forget kind of how I did that one, and I want them to look similar, so I do them at the same time. But you see, intentionally I'm going around. Okay, that one I did the whole thing. The other one I just did a little on the bottom. So switching each one. A lot of artists say the most important thing to being a great artist and just a good artist is having one central light source. Now with this is not taken from real life. I'm not looking at real jewelry, and I've painted Kali another time, and I've painted jewelry many times that I'm not thinking about that central light source. It's more a fantastical version of jewelry here. So I am not trying to go for photographic quality. But a light source is important. That's what I'll say. It is important. If you're doing something and you want it to be more realistic, more feeling like you're in the space of that image, then yes, pick one light source and then try to highlight everything from that direction and how it would bounce around from that area. But I didn't choose to do that with this one because it's just fun and fantastical. So I think with some art, it's okay to go just from your imagination. So this layer is the same day. I just took a little break and then I kind of fixed the angle. I like this angle better, a little closer. And all I was coming in to do now was add flowers. Whenever I'm adding another element too, I still try to add little details. I'll add little details on the earrings and go back to the face kind of throughout the whole painting. But unfortunately, what I didn't realize was that my camera was almost out of memory. So you'll get to see me lay in these flowers, and then I'll kind of do play-by-play of images that I was able to take until I could free up some memory. But before that, going into the flowers, I waited until the end, until my jewelry was pretty much 100% rendered, love my face, all these things, because the flowers are more wobbly shapes, the jewelry's really rigid, solid edges, and the flowers, I just wanted to flow between there wherever I had room, kind of, is how I imagine that. So that's why I waited to the end. Some people might just do it all at the same time, but I found that because I am kind of loosey-goosey as a painter, I didn't know exactly how much space I'd have left, and I just kind of wanted to add flowers with the intent of reacting to my previous stuff instead of having a solid plan, I suppose. So that's kind of how I approach painting, to be stress-free. I have a little plan, but not a big plan. And then I let the small stuff go. So, flowers and hair, that is the step. The hair so far had just been one solid layer of black. And it was kind of like a red black. Like, I always add something in there to tone it. But now I wanted to give her nice waves and some texture. So I mixed a yellow gray, and then I'm going to mix a purpley gray. So I get two different tones. And going into that hair, whatever kind of hair you want to do, you could always get more and more detailed, but even keeping it loose, I think, looks nice. So I went over, I just did some random waving, but then I also did some C shapes. So not creating a full wave, just giving a little hint of, oh, here's one bump with a little C shape of a highlight. So simplifying stuff like that is super helpful in painting. When you look at someone, you're not going to see every single strand of hair. There are artists who paint like that or draw like that, and that's totally fine. I've done images where it was something a little more specific and I wanted to see the hair, but I'd say for 90% of the hair, simplify it. Oh, a little couple C shapes to imply these bumps of curls. And then at the end, you can go in and add some single nice strands, maybe that fly out into the background or something like that on the edges, not in the center body of the hair. And then adding those small pieces on the outside, your brain will kind of fill in the blanks. So, little artist tip, simplify the big portion, add little details around the outside of hair. It's really, really helpful. And it looks beautiful. No one's gonna say, wow, I wish I could see a billion hairs. No one's thinking that. So now I'm going in with my blue gray to blend in with my yellow gray. Just kind of darkening the whole thing, so see, it really softened it. I still see that more solid black shining through. Every layer I add, I want to be able to see a little bit of that previous layer. I didn't do it for no reason. So as you're mixing, be sure to keep a little bit of that previous color, so there's all kinds of chaotic light. I did go in and more detailed finalize my teeth. I've been saving that for the end because I'm always going back to my lips like, that lip should be bigger, no, the lip should be thinner, and that's just how I am. So I saved that tiny stuff for the very end. I'm not going to do the teeth until just now. I was like, okay, I'm ready to add my little shadow. Now, the flower of Kali, each Hindu god has a flower assigned to it. I am not a practicing Hindu person. I just know what I have read, so you can correct me if I'm wrong. But from what I gather, each Hindu god has a flower assigned to them, and Kali's is the hibiscus. And so I wanted to put all these hibiscus flowers everywhere, and I love it. It makes her crown bigger. I love it. It's awesome. And it's a pretty simple flower to achieve. The petals kind of run together. You don't have to worry about seeing individual petal shapes. And really, whatever color you decide to make one, you just make the center a little darker. So that's what I keep doing. Go in and make that center a little darker. The edges are a little brighter. And then hibiscus have one kind of thick stamen or little trunk that's going to come right from that center with a big cluster of seeds on it. And that you would do after. Like, get your shading for that dark center, get your edges, kind of lay out the direction you want it, and look at a reference photo of the flower that you want to do. I definitely did. And, don't guess. Just look at a reference photo if you're not sure. So I've put in my 2 types of gray in my hair. And now I'm going in just clean brush and just doing wave lines over everything. Okay, now I'm adding a little bit brighter gray on top, but doing that wave lines because oil, it takes a long time to dry, so you're able to keep getting these colors to blend, keep changing the shape of your strokes because it's still wet. So I just went in, keep adding little wavy lines, curly lines, C-shapes. You can always do that to keep blending stuff in. I wanted her hair to be soft and subtle, realistic enough, but not detracting from the jewelry in the face. I really wanted that to be the focal point here. So about that part in the video is where I lost memory, and so here's a comparison photo. I take photos throughout my whole painting process, no matter what, and so the one on the left is as close as I could get it to being what was left off of from the video, and then the one on the right is everything that was missed. I took that whenever I realized I lost memory. So I added final highlights on the hibiscus flowers, 2 more layers in the jewelry, a very dark layer and then the brightest layer of all. I added even more dimensions into the face, and I added 2 beads that are going to be in the locks of her hair and some more hibiscus flowers down below her hair that you can't see. Just the first layer of that, but then I'll get to, you'll get to see me build up the stuff in the hair in the next part. I actually got to record that part. Here we are, final layer, woo woo! So I actually ended up doing 6 layers technically. I said in the beginning I might do 5, but this ended up being 6-ish, because sometimes I came in and just painted a flower. So is it a full layer? When I say layer, I mean a little bit of paint over every element. That's what I mean by layers. So you'll have to go over every element at least 5 or 6 times to get it to this point. And you can go even further. You get to 10 layers, 11 layers. It's only going to become more and more refined. That's kind of the style you'll feel out for yourself. So I'm doing my second and final layer on these hibiscus flowers down here in the hair, because I had to let that hair color dry. I had just worked that right before. And so now you can see this is 1 day later and they were ready to go. I kept my flowers just these 3 colors, but hibiscus flowers come in all kinds of colors, so I could do something else, but I liked the kind of fire element. She's a very powerful god of war, lust, all these things, and so I like that fire color scheme. And then I'm going to do a second coat on my beads in my hair too, those 2 little beads down there, and then the painting will be done, almost there. The beads were also something I came up with later, and even the flowers down here. Originally I had thought, if you saw my reference photo from before, I was just gonna do the crown and then the bottom half just be hair, but I realized that looked kind of empty. I needed something, and so I liked the flowers continuing to cascade down, and then I added the beads, just trying to think of some more jewelry, because a painting, to be cohesive, it's all about, like I said with the colors, you move if I put a little color of this somewhere, I'm going to move that around to other parts of the painting, so that's not the only area with that one color. Same thing with the elements, that's physical clothing and jewelry she's wearing. I wanted to bring that around. I thought I was lacking some of that metal geometric texture on these bottom corners, so that's why I decided to add these little tubey beads, and I just put 2 emeralds in each one. And yeah, that was very simplified compared with the other jewelry. I just did my base layer was yellow. It kind of blended with the hair, right? So I waited for it to dry. Second layer I put on was orange, and I just kind of followed those diamonds and kind of followed the edges just to show some creases maybe in the metal. And then the third layer was a light yellow. So that's pretty much it for that. And then I'm going to come in and do a second coat in the emerald part, because I haven't done anything since the first time I messed with that. And then after that second coat of the emerald part, that's pretty much it. So, the rest of the jewelry, I did like purples, all these other funky shades. The beads I kept a little simpler because everyone is going to be looking at her face. And, these extra things don't need as much, I think, down here. It's kind of like the triangles and little L shapes in her breastplate. That I kept simpler as well, because our brains kind of fill in the rest. I put all that oomph into the face, into that crown, and then keeping the rest simpler works sometimes. Some people fully render stuff. I consider it like atmosphere. If I painted a hill far away, I'm not going to see in perfect photographic quality a person standing on that hill far away, because there's air in between, because our eyes don't focus that way. I think of it like that. Like my eyes, I paint focused on the face. That's where my eyes want to be focused. And then the things further away from the face become a little more loosey-goosey. That's my professional term. Here we go. That's the painting final image. And so I'm going to put up here, the first layer. Compare that first layer with the next 5 layers and how far a painting comes in just a few layers here. So like I was saying, you could do 10, 11 layers. People get more and more perfectionist as they get into their paintings, and that's definitely doable. But even with 5 or 6, this looks awesome. And I like to take the pictures to see how far I've come. That's the reason I do that. It encourages me to see, okay, don't give up. The first thing's always going to be a little whack. That's just because it's the very first thing. You got to start somewhere. And then you keep going and look at how beautiful it looks all together. In total, this took me about 9 hours. So you can put that into perspective. If you're going to be painting long enough to start charging for your paintings, you can either do it by the hour, or some people, like myself, charge per square inch, depending how large someone wants it. And that's something you can feel out. But let's put up that image one more time, because you need to see that. You need to see that anyone can start a painting. What everyone cannot do is have the patience to continue. See it through. Push through that weird feeling in the beginning where you're like, this doesn't make any sense. It's not my vision. That's right, it's not your vision, because you need at least 5 more layers. Thank you so much for joining me today in Amber's Corner. I hope I encouraged at least one person to start painting who maybe's been putting it off or thinking about it, because I believe you can do it. See you next time. Bye.